I checked into an old hotel, thinking I'd found a cheap place to sleep. But the rooms weren't empty, and the things I saw inside still follow me every night. The rain hammered the streets like nails against glass as I dragged my suitcase toward the glowing sign of the Regal Pines Hotel. Its neon letters sputtered in the storm, half burned out, so that from across the street it looked like it said Real Pies instead of a place to sleep. The joke would have been funny if not for the hour, the rain, and the way the hotel loomed over me like a mausoleum. The revolving door creaked as I pushed inside. The lobby was grand, once maybe even luxurious, but time had stripped it bare. The carpet was damp with the smell of mold. The chandeliers swayed as if caught in a draft, though the air was heavy and still. Wallpaper peeled in long strips, revealing water-stained plaster beneath. At the front desk sat a man who might have been old, or perhaps just worn down by something deeper than age. His eyes were clouded, not like cataracts, but like marbles dulled by too many hands. His smile was stretched too wide, and when he spoke, his lips barely moved. "You'll be staying the night," he rasped. His voice carried a wet sound like paper tearing. I nodded, fumbling for my wallet. His hands slid across the counter to pass me the ledger, and I noticed the skin along his knuckles stretched thin, almost translucent, like wax. The names in the ledger were strange. Some were scratched out violently with thick black ink. Others were smeared, unreadable, as though someone had dragged their hand across wet ink. I signed my name quickly, eager to be done. The pen bled red ink that seeped into the paper, spreading like a vein. I wiped my hand on my jeans, unsettled by the sticky feeling. "Room 36, he said finally, pushing a tarnished brass key across the counter. His fingernails were long, yellowed, chipped. He hesitated before adding, "Don't wander the halls after midnight." The words hit me like a joke told without humor. I forced a chuckle, but he didn't return it. He just kept smiling, that wide, unnatural grin as I took the key and turned away. The elevator groaned when I pressed the button. The brass doors closed reluctantly, as if they'd rather not. The ride up was slow, the kind of slowness that makes every second feel longer. I swore I heard faint whispers through the walls, as though voices carried between the floors. When the doors opened on the third floor, the air was heavier, colder. The wallpaper peeled in curling strips. The carpet was stained dark in places I didn't want to identify. The overhead lights buzzed like flies, flickering in a rhythm that felt almost intentional. Room 36's door stood at the end of the hall. Its surface was scarred with deep scratches marks that looked too irregular to be from a key, too deliberate to be from where, like something had clawed at it from the inside. I slid the key into the lock. The tumblers inside turned reluctantly, grinding like teeth. The door creaked open, releasing a smell that was sharp, metallic like iron, like blood. The room was dark, the curtains drawn tight. I flicked on the light. It buzzed, flickered, then settled. The room looked ordinary enough. A bed, a dresser, a mirror. But the sheets were stained yellow, and the carpet bore a dark blotch that spread from under the bed like something had seeped there long ago. I stepped inside, and the door closed behind me with a click that sounded final. The door clicked shut behind me with the finality of a vault. I froze, listening. The muffled hum of the hallway died, and all that remained was the shallow buzz of the lone bulb above the bed. It flickered erratically, each burst of light exposing more of the filth around me. The carpet was damp, darker near the bed, and when I stepped further in, My shoe peeled away with a sickening stick, as if I'd stepped in something half-dried. The metallic odor was stronger here, so sharp it burned my nostrils. I set my suitcase against the dresser. Instead of the dull thud of wood against carpet, it clanged, a hollow metallic ring that seemed out of place. My pulse quickened. The dresser loomed against the wall, its surface warped, its drawers crooked dot. Above it hung a mirror. Its surface wasn't cloudy from dust, it looked like smoke pressed beneath the glass, writhing faintly. I rubbed it with my sleeve, leaving a streak. My reflection stared back, but as I leaned closer, its eyes lagged blinking just after mine, mouth curving upward into a smile I hadn't made. A jolt of cold swept through me. I staggered back, but the mirror shivered as though it were breathing. I opened the top drawer. Inside were scraps of paper, mottled with stains, corners eaten by mold. Something pale rolled against the wood. At first, I thought it was chalk, but then I saw the nail. A finger. The skin had shriveled, grey, the flesh tight against bone, my throat constricted. I dropped the drawer, but it didn't slam shut. It slammed itself, as if yanked from the inside. The sound echoed far too long, like the dresser was hollow and deep, a tunnel instead of wood. I staggered toward the bed. The sheets were stained yellow-brown, darker at the center, the fabric stiff as parchment. Against every instinct, I peeled them back. Something small and white gleamed in the hollow of the mattress. I plucked it free, my hands trembling. The jagged enamel was unmistakable, a human tooth. My stomach twisted. I staggered into the bathroom, choking back bile. The faucet groaned when I turned it, coughing out bursts of brown water. The smell of rust and rot filled the air. I splashed my face, and cold droplets streaked down my cheeks. I lifted my head. The mirror didn't. Show me, it showed the bed. On it lay a figure, pale, curled in the sheets. Hair matted, skin stretched thin like parchment. Slowly, it began to turn its head. The bathroom light popped and died, plunging me into blackness. I fumbled for the door, heart hammering, and stumbled back into the room. The bed was empty, the sheets smooth, untouched. Only the tooth remained, sitting neatly in the middle of the mattress, as though someone had placed it there deliberately. My breath came in ragged bursts. I backed toward the door, hand closing around the knob. But before I could twist it, a sound froze me in place. Scratching, it came from inside the walls. At first faint, then louder, circling the room. High above my head, then scraping low at the floor. The sound of claws raking through hollow wood. I pressed my ear to the wall, trembling. The scratching paused, then resumed on the opposite side. It was moving fast, impossibly fast. The bulb above the bed pulsed with each scrape, flickering like it was synced to the sound. Shadows crawled across the corners, stretching unnaturally long. In the strobing light, I thought I saw shapes, elongated limbs bending wrong. Faces watching from the plaster. I yanked open the nightstand drawer, desperate for something to defend myself with. Inside, crumpled paper lined with faded ink. Beneath it, something small. I reached an end, pulled out an eye. It was shriveled, dried, but still staring, iris cloudy grey. The scratching grew frantic. My pulse roared. I dropped the eye. It rolled across the floor, stopping at the base of the bed. The shadows shifted, lengthening toward it like grasping fingers. A whisper slithered through the room, low and wet, coiling around my ear. You checked in, but you won't check out. The doorknob in my hand twisted on its own. The doorknob turned under my hand, though I hadn't moved it. I staggered back, chest heaving, but when the door swung open, the hallway beyond wasn't the same hallway I had walked down earlier. The carpet was darker, nearly black. The wallpaper peeled in longer strips, hanging like damp skin. The ceiling lights flickered in rhythm, one after another, as though guiding me. I should have run. I should have forced the elevator, the stairs, anything. But some compulsion pulled me forward. My body moved before my mind could argue. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing me into the corridor. The hallway stretched unnaturally, longer than it should have been. I walked, suitcase abandoned in the room behind me, every step sinking into the spongy, damp carpet. The sound of dripping water echoed faintly, though the ceiling above was dry dot. Doors lined either side, each numbered in tarnished brass. 308, 310, 312, but the numbers repeated. After 3 doors, the same numbers appeared again. 308, 310, 312. My head spun. I turned, expecting to see the elevator doors at the far end. Instead, more hallway, more doors, endless. Something whispered behind one of them, a soft whimper, like a child crying. I pressed my ear to the wood. For a moment, silence. Then, suddenly, a loud crash from inside, as though furniture had been thrown across the room. I stumbled back. The door rattled in its frame, the knob twisting wildly as something tried to get out. I ran. My feet pounded the carpet, breath tearing through my throat. But no matter how far I ran, the doors didn't change. Always the same 3 numbers. 308, 310, 312. The lights above buzzed, flickered, and went out one by one, swallowing the hall in darkness. Only a few ahead of me remained, sputtering weakly. I sprinted toward them, desperate for light. Then I saw it in the flicker. At the far end, barely illuminated, stood a figure. Tall, pale, its body draped in something that clung like wet fabric. Its head was bent, neck too long, too flexible. It swayed side to side, like listening for me. I pressed against the wall, heart slamming. The figure jerked suddenly, snapping its head toward me. The light above it burst, plunging it into blackness. When the light flickered again, it was closer. I turned and ran the other way. The hall twisted, bending at impossible angles, doors curving like teeth around me. The carpet squelched beneath my shoes, wet now, soaking through my socks. I grabbed a doorknob in panic and shoved it open. Inside, the room was identical to 306. Same dresser, same mirror, same bed. Only this time, the bed was occupied. A figure lay beneath the sheets, chest rising and falling in sharp jerks. As I stepped closer, its head snapped toward me. Its face was blurred, smeared like wet paint. But its mouth stretched wide, impossibly wide, until the skin tore at the corners. The door slammed behind me. I spun, but the mirror above the dresser reflected something else entirely. Not the room, not me. It showed the hallway, and in the hallway stood the pale figure, pressing its face against the glass. I stumbled back, knocking the nightstand over. A drawer spilled open. Another fragment, a tooth, bloodied fresh this time. The mirror cracked, and the pale figure stepped through. The mirror did not shatter with a sound. It breathed apart, the cracks spreading like veins in skin. The pale figure pressed forward, its face flattening against the glass until the features smeared into white noise, then bulged through as if the surface were a film of water. I stumbled, caught my heel on the fallen nightstand, and hit the floor hard. The bulb above the bed. In those slices of light, the thing stepped into the room. Up close. It wasn't tall because it stood tall. It was tall because it hung, ligaments pulling the body upward like a marionette, as if strings were attached far above the ceiling. Its skin looked waterlogged, puckered and grey. Where eyes should have been, the sockets were faint, holozen till the next flicker, when two pale circles flared inside, like coins held in a corpse's hands. The room smelled like wet, old mouths. I crawled backward, palms skating across the carpet. My hand brushed something small and hard by the bed, the tooth. Not the dried relic from before. This one was slick, red at the root. The carpet drank the stain greedily. Another flicker. The shape twitched, head cocking, as if smelling me. Its mouth opened. I thought it was going to speak, but what came out was a sound like keys dragged across piano wires. "Who are you?" I rasped, throat raw. It didn't answer. It knelt without bending, as if a puppeteer had cut a string and tightened another. The swollen hands hung inches from the floor, fingers too long, pads shriveled like old fruit. They hovered over the nightstand drawer that had spilled open. Inside, half hidden beneath the crumpled hotel stationery, lay the dried eye I'd dropped, staring sideways like it had rolled itself into a hiding place and failed. 3 fragments, finger, eye tooth. The warning from the beginning. My own memory of the words clicked into place like tumblers in a lock. Find them, piece them together, and the truth will reveal itself. The figure's head rotated slow, ungreased toward me. The pale circles and the sockets brightened. In the next strobe, the mouth widened to show a dark line of emptiness where teeth should be. In the next, it snapped shut again, jaw skewing like a broken hinge. It took a step, not forward sideways, gliding, as if the world had been rotated and it was obeying a different gravity than mine. I scrambled to my knees and lunged for the dresser. The smoky mirror still clung to the wall, its cracks knitting and unknitting with each pulse of light. Behind the fractures, images swam, hallways, doors. The clerk's stretched smile, the ledger with names struck out in black. Beneath all of it, buried in the static eye, saw a fourth thing, a brass room number, 306, then 308, 310, 312, then 306 again. The numbers marched like a heartbeat, a loop with no out. I jammed open the top drawer with my shoulder. Paper tore. The smell of iron surged. Something pale rolled against my wrist and wedged in my sleeve. I knew, without looking, the figure's hands flexed. In the strobe, they went from inches away to a breath from my face. The mouth opened wide, wider, until it wasn't a mouth but a door, a dark rectangle where the light was swallowed whole. Cold poured out of it, the kind of cold that makes bones feel hollow. I seized the tooth in one hand, the finger in the other, and scanned the floor wildly for the eye. Thereby the bed leg, where the carpet sank as if someone lay there, invisible. I scooped it up, gagging as the dried surface scraped my skin. The mirror's cracks brightened, edges glittering like tiny knives. The images behind them steadied into a single frame. The front desk, the ledger open, a pen bleeding red. But the hand signing wasn't mine. It was grey, translucent, knuckles like wax. I pressed the 3 fragments to the glass. The room lurched, not the room, the hotel. The air grew dense, wet, as though I'd been dunked into a cold bath. Through the mirror, the clerk lifted his head. His eyes were marbles again, polished and dead. But something like relief flitted across the surface. Finally, he said, though his lips didn't move. The words vibrated through the cracked silver backing, a voice from inside a wall. Every guest leaves a piece behind. I swallowed. What is this place? A place that remembers us more than we remember ourselves. The Clarkor, the memory of him. A ledger that must balance. Rooms that must stay full. You checked in with all your parts. You will not check out the same. Behind me, the figure swayed closer. In the mirror, I saw it differently. Not a stranger, but a guest layered over myself like a double exposure. My outline, my height. My hands, no, the mirror blinked. The ledger's pages turned by themselves, flipping backward through names I couldn't read, smears and scratches and ink-soaked scars. It stopped at a blank line. A pen drifted up, as if lifted by a hand that wasn't there. The bulb above the bed blew out. Darkness dropped like a curtain. Only the mirror glowed, lit from within. Piece them together, I whispered, not sure if I meant the fragments or the story. I pressed the eye harder against the glass until it seated into a socket-shaped web of cracks. I slid the tooth into a jagged split, where it stuck like a glyph in a puzzle. I placed the finger against a vertical fracture that ran from top to bottom like a spine. For a second, nothing. Then the mirror bit down. Pain flared along my fingertips as the silver backing drank the pieces. The glass warmed, then burned. The crack web pulsed like a heart. I tried to pull back, but my hands were stuck. Payment accepted, the clerk's voice murmured from the other side. Room released. Behind me, the puppeted thing collapsed, strings cut. It hit the carpet with a wet, folding sound. The cold in the room retreated, leaving a hollow where it had been, as if a storm had moved on and left a pressure vacuum behind. In the mirror, the hallway straightened. The repeating numbers settled into a familiar run, 302, 304, 306. And beyond the elevator doors, the mirror spit my hands free. I stumbled back, cradling my fingers. No blood, no burns, but the fragments were gone. On the bed, the sheets sank as if someone had just stood up. I didn't look. I ran the door opened on the first try. The corridor outside was narrow and damp, but finite. The lights held steady. Far down, a red exit sign glowed. I sprinted. The numbers advanced properly now, no loops. Behind me, a sound rose in footsteps, not scraping, but paper flipping. Pages, a ledger being updated. I hammered the elevator button. The doors dragged open, reluctant as always, and I dove inside. The panel lights were old, the buttons yellowed. Lobby blinked. The doors began to close. Something slid between them, a hand, grey waxen. I slammed the door close button with my palm. The doors resisted, shuddering against the pressure. The hand flattened, then thinned, then seeped back like pressed clay. The doors kissed shut. The elevator groaned. As I dropped, the numbers overhead counted down. 3, 2, 1. Eldot in the lobby, the clerk looked up. He was alone behind the desk, ledger shut. His smile was back in place, but it no longer looked too wide. It looked tired. I approached on trembling legs, waiting for him to tell me I owed something, waiting for him to ask for proof I was whole. He slid the brass key toward me across the counter. "Check out." I nodded, unable to speak. "Room 306, thanks you for your stay," he said. "Not everyone pays correctly the first time. What happens if they don't?" He tilted his head. The chandelier above us creaked. Somewhere deep in the hotel, a door slammed, followed by a long, wet dragging. "They stay as hosts," he said, "until someone brings the right pieces back." My throat closed. Those fragments were they. "Gifts," he said. "Leftovers, IOUs." I turned away. The revolving door moaned as I pushed through into the storm. The rain was cool, clean. It tasted like the surface of the world on the sidewalk. I checked my hands in the glare of a streetlight. 10 fingers. I touched my teeth with my tongue. All there. I closed one eye, then the other. The world remained. Behind me, the hotel's sign flickered. For a heartbeat, the missing letters returned, blazing whole. Regal Pines shone in full. Then they died again, one by one, until only a single word remained. Buzzing in the rain, guest. I didn't look back again. But that night, every night since, when I close my eyes, I feel the mirror warming beneath my palms. And I hear the clerk's voice turning pages in the dark. Somewhere, a ledger is making space. And in the small hours, when the world thins and every hallway looks the same, I taste iron and wake with a tooth in my mouth that isn't mine. I never went back to the Regal Pines. I told myself it was just a nightmare brought on by rain, exhaustion, and too much cheap whiskey before I checked in. But no excuse explains what I carried out of that place or what still follows me. On some nights, when the storm rattles my windows, I swear I hear it. The scratch of pen on paper, pages turning, a ledger being updated. At first, I thought it was just the sound of branches tapping the glass, but then I heard the words, not spoken aloud, written, my name, over and over. Each time, in red, the fragments I found, the finger, the eye, the tooth should have vanished with that mirror. I felt them burn away, dissolve into whatever hunger the hotel kept hidden. But weeks later, I woke one morning with something sharp rolling between my teeth. I spat it into my hand. A tooth. Not mine. The next night, I found the eye. It was sitting in a glass of water on my nightstand, cloudy, staring upward as if it had always been there. By dawn, it was gone, and then the scratching returned. Not in walls this time, but in my veins. I feel it late at night, a crawling itch beneath the skin of my arms, like something is trying to write on me from the inside. Sometimes I see faint lines raised on my flesh, as though words are pressing through. I wash them away, but by morning they return, deeper, darker. The hotel isn't a building. It isn't a place you can burn down or lock away. It's a hunger, a book that can never close until every page is filled. Guests don't check out. They bleed out pieces of themselves until the ledger is satisfied. And when it isn't, something else steps in. Something hollow-eyed, swaying like a puppet with strings too tight. I saw one of them fall in that room. But what if that thing was someone like me? Someone who stayed too long? Someone who didn't pay enough? That thought gnaws at me, because maybe I didn't pay enough either. Maybe the fragments weren't mine to give, but borrowed from another poor soul. Maybe I walked out whole because someone else stayed broken. The sign outside still flickers when I pass that street. Sometimes it reads Regal Pines. Sometimes it dies until only one word shines. Guest, and once Sony one sit showed something else. My own surname, pulsing in red dot. I keep moving. City to city, motel to motel. Never in one place long enough for the air to grow heavy, for the walls to hum, for the mirror to ripple. But no matter how far I run, the reflection follows. Hotel bathrooms catch me staring too long. Elevator doors close slower than they should. And sometimes, just before sleep, I hear that voice, low, tired, but smiling. Every guest leaves a piece behind. I wake sweating, tongue pressed to my teeth, counting each one. I whisper numbers under my breath like prayers. 10 fingers, 32 teeth, 2 eyes, still mine, for now. Because somewhere, deep inside the ledger's belly, there's still an empty line waiting to be filled. And I know whose name it's saving, mine.